This is Father Gregory Pine.
This is Father Joseph Anthony Kress.
And welcome to Godsplaining. Thanks to all those who support us. If you enjoy the show, please consider making a monthly donation on Patreon. Be sure to like and subscribe to Godsplaining wherever you listen to your podcasts. Father Joseph Anthony.
Yo.
So in this episode, preview of coming attractions, we're going to talk a little bit about entertainment.
Yeah.
But people have different ways of, what we'll once say, entertaining themselves or cultivating healthy entertainment or unhealthy entertainment in certain cases.
Yeah.
It's interesting insofar as what a man does with his free time gives you some indication as to his level of freedom. I was listening. Where was I listening to? I wasn't listening to anything.
No.
I was reading something.
A different form of listening.
The Sisters of Life imprint publication, and they were recounting this conversation between a journalist and St. John Paul II, and the journalist, just overwhelmed by John Paul II's social calendar and its many demands, was like, "What do you do in your free time?" Or like, do you get any free time? And St. John Paul II is said to have responded, "All of my time is free."
Oh, gosh.
I love that man. He just gets me excited
That
about
cuts
life.
deep.
So in addition to all of your time being free, what do you do in your free time?
So my free time is pretty much filled with golf.
Nice. Okay.
I love golf. It's a full-on addiction. I can't get it. You know, I'm horrible.
Okay.
I'm not good.
Okay.
But I love it.
Okay.
You just need like one or two decent real golf shots in a round.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's why I keep playing this game. I'll keep coming back chasing, hitting that pure 6-iron into the green and just holding the green. Like that's what I do with my time. So in the moments of my life where, let's say it's dark outside, or maybe it's rainy and cold, and I'm not able to go. I will.
Simulator?
No, oh gosh, I wish, dude. If only.
VR goggles.
Yeah, exactly.
VR golf goals?
Golf goals?
Yeah.
No, but I'll watch like golf YouTube. You know, I'll watch swing tip videos and things like that. Yeah, exactly. I'll be in my room doing the full turn, like trying to get that through. So
nice.
I've put all my efforts into that being a skill. And I remember like when I started taking up golf, it was when I first got to Charlottesville, probably about 7-8 years ago, and I decided that was going to be my hobby.
Okay.
And because I wanted something that...
It was like that or methamphetamines?
Yeah, well, I said Virginia, not West Virginia. I can say that because I was born in West Virginia, for the record.
It's okay.
Like, it's okay.
Don't be offended.
I'm from there. I was born in Wheeling, West Virginia. But I decided golf because I said, I need something that gets me outdoors.
Yeah.
Like, I could be stuck in my room reading books all day and things. I need sunlight. I need to get outdoors. I need to touch grass.
Nice.
Like, those types of things, right? So golf is something that gets me outside. And then I wanted a hobby that was a skill that I could constantly be kind of perfecting and working on and never satisfied. Or like, oh, this is, I've accomplished that. It's like, no, with golf, you can always be, working on your swing and doing a little better or things like that. So yeah,
nice.
That's me.
Quote, Mrs. Hamilton, you'll never be satisfied. So the thing with golf is that to an outside observer, it seems like you're paying to be frustrated.
Yeah, a little bit.
To an inside observer, is it like that or is it different?
It's different.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I watched a video of Samuel L. Jackson, and he said like why he loves golf so much is that it's not like he's ever competing against the other people in his group. Like everybody can be at radically different skill levels.
Yeah.
The opponent is the course itself. So anytime I go play, it's like I'm trying to play the course, and the course is always different. The wind's different, the lie is different, and things like that. So to me, it's ever ancient and ever new. Like you can play the same course again and again, but I never get tired of that. Yeah, and there's always a different challenge there. So there's just a certain competitive spirit that I'm super competitive in that sense, but I'm able to like kind of direct my competition against other people. I need to beat them and be better than them. It's like, no, my competition is the course, and it's kind of ever evolving. And so where am I today? Is it my hands are freezing cold, or what else am I dealing with bringing into this? But I'm able to kind of like channel my energies into that kind of competition.
See, I'm not a finesse man. I'm more of a brute.
Yeah, you are.
So maybe it's on account of the proximity of my place of birth and upgrowth to the city of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
But like I'd say that I feel most out of my element in country club sports. Like I think I'd prefer figure skating to like tennis or golf.
Oh, interesting.
On account of the fact that like it's the type of thing where I will always hit the ball over the back line in tennis, and I will always shank and or hook the ball in golf because I'm just trying to motor my way through.
Just brute force.
And that's not a thing that one can do in these. You need to like actually have skill and or technique, both of which I lack. I was good at sport. I mean, I was never good at sports, but comparatively speaking, good at sports where you could just like will your way forward.
Yeah.
So like cross country, track and field.
Impose your will on others.
Impose your will on other people, even if it wasn't by the aforementioned finesse, technique, and or skill, but just by like terror. Yeah. It was kind of like a I am vengeance, I am the knight, I have the ball in my hands type thing. So as a kind of Batman type character on the pitch or court or whatever else, that's really where I excelled. But we're going to talk about entertainment only after having made a quick announcement.
There it is.
So I'm going to consult my phone insofar as this also plays into the theme of today. So we sometimes have sponsors for episodes, and we're grateful for that. And this episode is sponsored by the Busch School of Business, which makes available to you the Master of Science in Business, which at the Catholic University of America, that is a 9-month program rooted in Catholic social teaching and virtue-centered education designed for students with liberal arts, STEM, and business backgrounds. I think that might be an exhaustive dialectic. I don't know if are there other backgrounds? It's hard to say. Even the background less. This accelerated in-person program gives each student a comprehensive mastery of business disciplines and equips them to pursue business as a force for good. The Master of Science in Business program, located in Washington, D.C., across from the Dominican House of Buddies, but a stone's throw from this very studio, has a long history of success with a 99% record of job placements within 5 months of graduation. To learn more about this program, go to MSB.CATHOLIC.EDU. That's incredible.
Mike Sierra Bravo.Catholic.edu. Nice. There we are.
Okay, yeah, we had Dr. Andrew Abela, Dean Abela of the Busch School of Business, on for a guest episode not too long ago, and he was speaking of super habits, that is to say virtues, which is, as the announcement said, one of the focuses of the aforementioned Busch School. Yeah. So kudos, glory, and honor. I think kudos means one of those things. Never mind, it doesn't matter. Keep going, Gregory.
Yeah.
So you were talking to me recently about not Dana Gioia, but Ted Gioia.
Yes,
and his theory as to the progressive devolution of a culture, as to its kind of preoccupation with whether art or entertainment or distraction or, and on down the line. So to set this conversation up, take us there.
Yeah.
Where do we find ourselves at present in the kind of life cycle of a culture, and how can we tell on the basis of the things in which we indulge?
I stumbled upon this article written by Ted Gioia, and he was talking about the state of culture. And he kind of introduces it by like, hey, every year there's the State of the Union address by the president, or corporations, their CEO give a state of the culture. And he's like, nobody's talked about culture. So I'm going to propose a state of the culture. And that was enough to grab my attention and then reading that. So I want to give a very brief synopsis of that article that he wrote. And what he was saying in there is that every culture properly produces art. Art is the product of a culture, and every culture does it in multiple ways, right? You have music, you have kind of paintings and visual arts, but
architecture, opera, all manner of good things besides.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what culture does. It expresses itself through art. And so then he starts to look at this and see kind of, like you mentioned, the devolution of it all. And he says, well, there's such a thing as art, but the culture can also do something with that art. And in its kind of, I don't want to say worse expressions, but it can kind of bastardize that into something else. And what we've seen is then art kind of devolves into entertainment. And then the culture is just engaging with things that are entertaining in that way. And then there's a further devolution. It devolves from entertainment into distraction. And then that goes in for a while, and then it continually devolves, and it goes into from distraction now into addiction. And one of the claims that he makes in that article is that we are now in a post-entertainment era. Like we're no longer looking at art, we're no longer actually looking at entertainment. We're after that. And that really kind of resonated with me because you started to think about it and look about it. in that, like, I think, we grew up in an age that was very entertainment heavy, and you saw it influence education, you saw it influence, religious worship, you saw entertainment became the major engine behind a lot of things. And he mentions how you can look at kind of the celebrities of a culture. And I think we grew up in an age where the entertainer was the celebrity. You think of Justin Timberlake. He could sing, he could act, he could dance. He was an all-around entertainer, right? But we're past that now. The celebrities of our current culture are influencers. All they do is produce distractions, And so it's a very interesting kind of thing to think about and to see how all of this plays out. And towards the end of the article, he talks about, the effects of dopamine and all that kind of fun stuff, which is also very, very interesting. But he kind of says, like, there's a way for a culture to properly engage in art, and then it goes fast paced, and then it's like kind of unwieldy side of it all. And he kind of breaks it down in all these areas with music and communication and literature and all that. And the one that always grabbed my attention is sports, right? He said, with sports, you used to engage in that form of art, right? You used to engage in that by playing the sport. You would go out and play the sport. And then it moved from that to entertainment, where now the sport is emphasized as you engage with the sport by being a spectator of it, not going in the field and playing it yourself, but now just watching it. And then it moved from that to distraction to people don't even go watch the sport anymore. They just watch the highlights, right? Condensed versions of the game as quickly as it can be consumed. And then so much so that it goes from that to now we've gamified the spectatorship. And you have now sports betting on a radically huge rise right now, where it's on we're addicted to the sport because it's gamified and now on the addiction level. And so reading this article, it was the State of Culture 2024 and things, was a really eye-opening kind of article because it helped to kind of put words to some experiences that we've had, but also then to look back on our life of faith and how we approach worship. And do we engage in healthy leisure? Is there a way to reverse this course? Do we put the toothpaste back into the tube? And if so, how do we do this? But, just kind of lead off to say, this is the framework that we're going to have this conversation about. And these are kind of the terms that we'll be discussing. But with that kind of understanding of where we currently are as a culture in 2024, and how are we engaging with what our culture should be producing, which is art, but is it doing that? And if so, how do we actually maybe slightly course correct it?
Okay, so I have a kind of thought pursuant to that, and I think that we can just chart our course through addiction, distraction, entertainment, and art, arriving at the source thereof. So a further introductory or just kind of thought pursuant to what you described is that I think that sometimes folks think about their lives as individuals or maybe as family units, as one primarily of defining against and resisting the tendency of. And, we had this conversation 10, 15 years ago with the publication of the Benedict option and various ways in which, as believing persons, families, communities, to try to contend with some of the negative aspects of the culture in which we live. But I think that we're at a point at this stage in the game where we just can't, not in the sense like we give up and then we just capitulate and then whatever, we let the culture dictate what it is that we're going to do with our lives. But in the sense that, like, we need to be able to admit at the outset that we are influenced by our culture, that we are the products of our culture.
Yes.
And even if we're striving manfully in order to address this obstacle or redress this wrong, that we're going to be influenced by it. So I think the point here isn't so much to say, I'm going to carve out a life entirely against or entirely other, but just to say, I'm going to be aware or, like conscious of the ways in which I benefit from and also suffer from my cultural milieu. And I'm going to take those on board.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that way I am not just kind of storm-tossed and shipwrecked in a way that's utterly unconscious, but so that I can be cognizant of the way in which holiness is meant to unfold in this time and in this place.
And I think that's so important because what you recognize is that, like, yes, we actually don't live in vacuums. Like, we live in this culture.
Yeah.
And that is a gift to us. The time in history in which we live, the geography in which we find ourselves, those are actually gifts given to us, and to see it as such. Now, we don't live in a vacuum, but just as you were describing that, it's like you kind of have to take the pulse and take note of it. It's not necessarily something that should paralyze us. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so bad. There's nothing. This is the worst that's ever been. And what do I do with it? Like, there's nothing to do. Now I'm just nihilistic and paralyzed by it. But at the same time, it's not something where you're like, okay, I have all the energy in the world. I'm gonna change the world and be a one-man show and just take it all on, because then you actually end up overexhausting yourself and destroying your humanity in the midst of trying to change humanity. This is a whole nother issue. Is like, I don't actually believe in like redeeming culture, saving culture. I believe in saving and redeeming a heart. Like redeeming a person. And if we lose our humanity in the project of saving the culture, then have we gained anything?
Yeah.
And it's like that we have to understand that. And so being able to take that step back and say like, okay, I'm taking note of the cultural milieu that I'm in. I'm taking note of my geography and the time in history actually gives me the ability to stand on my feet in this place.
Yeah.
Not to be paralyzed by it and not to be overexhausted and destroyed by it.
Yeah. All right, let's then chart a course through addiction, distraction, entertainment, and art. When it comes to addiction, like I'm more and more conscious of the fact, especially as the technological means are refined and as the algorithm is attuned, I'm just like not strong enough in the sense like I'm weak, I'm wounded, and I'm going to doom scroll if given the opportunity. Yep. So it's like at the end of the day, you're tired. All right, you've worked from like whatever o'clock to whatever o'clock. It's like I wake up at 5:20. I'm in the chapel for a holy hour at 6, and then we have morning prayer and mass, and I'm usually working from 8 until about 9 p.m. with the interruptions for prayer. So like an hour at midday, an hour and 15, like at dinner time. But it's like a fullish dayish. And at the end, I know that I'm just tired, and I just want something. I don't know what it is exactly, but it's probably just, biochemically speaking, it's dopamine. But like, I don't know, environmentally speaking, it's like relaxation. And I know that if I bring my phone into my cell, I'm going to look at the websites that I always look at. So it's like I have my blog roll, as it were. It's like I always go to ESPN.com, and then I do like political commentary of a certain sort. It's like Daily Signal, Daily Caller. It's like, now you know what I think. And then like I usually look at New Advent to see what churchy stuff is up. I look at the Eagles and the Sixers fan sites.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So Bleeding Green Nation and then Liberty Ballers. And it's like, if I do that, I know that it's going to be 25 minutes, I'm going to be backlit stimulated. It's going to take me longer to fall asleep. And then 5:20 comes the next morning and I haven't slept enough.
Right.
So like basically my options are when I go down to Compline at 9 p.m., I have to leave my phone in my office and not look back until 8 a.m. when I come up from mass. Or to sleep less than I want, to feel less than I ought, which is fascinating because it's just like, I can't interact with the technology in a healthy fashion. There's like only ever unhealthy interaction or distance, which is wild. But I think that like a lot of people feel themselves in the grips of a kind of addiction culture. Like maybe it's like largely dealing or trafficking in distraction, but I think a lot of us have close encounters with like the addiction power, which is just everywhere at this stage of the game.
And I think that's why it was so helpful to kind of hear this like actually laid before me in this kind of sequential pattern. It's like, oh my gosh, yes, I've experienced that. That's giving words to an experience that I have is like, and there's a little bit of kind of, I don't know, pause in the sense of like, this was manufactured. Like, am I just a puppet of some big, marketing system, or am I just a puppet of Silicon Valley that is preying upon my weak humanity? But after recognizing that, then that gives you the ability, like I said, to stand on your 2 feet in this and to kind of take claim of something and say, okay, actually, I have a certain freedom and I have a willpower over top of this addiction. Now, there are certain things that my phone is useful for. It's a tool among many in my life, but I need to actually step into that and change certain actions and behaviors before that or because of that. But it is that kind of recognition of like, yeah, actually I am in this very addictive world and all things are addictive, and it's not just substances, but it's actually my culture.
Yeah. Okay. So working our way then from addiction to distraction, I think that's where we kind of find ourselves in this cultural moment as you have described it on the basis of the commentary of Ted Gioia. But this idea, like you made mention of influencers, you made mention of highlights or blah, blah, and thus and such is, I think that like everyone has noticed that our attention spans over the course of the last 25 years have gone from whatever, like 40 minutes to 40 seconds. Yeah. I'm sure there are statistics which actually give solid data on the basis of which we can make rational judgments. I don't know what that data is, but it seems like it's gone from this to that, and that is much smaller than this.
Yeah.
And so on account of the fact that people are trying to make a living on the basis of whatever the entertainment value or distracting value of the content that they curate, the content that they produce, they know that, I mean, it's like kind of behaviorist in its psychological outlook. They're just trying to produce behavior. They're just trying to produce results, and you're clicking, engaging, sticking with, and then recommending, liking, subscribing, whatever it is. And so they're trying to make it as low demand, high dopamine as they can.
Yeah.
Right. And so like the content gets shorter and shorter and shorter. And then like the TikTok trends or whatever, like these things just tend towards the more sensational, ridiculous, and as it were kind of zany. And whether that's, I mean, whatever it is. So there are different ways in which to engage with the internet. But it seems like everyone's out there just dying. Everyone's just out there like dealing with sadness, dealing with anger, trying to make a way through. And so we're just indulging in distraction as a way by which to what? To cope, to make it to the next day. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think that, this is where, if we're starting to reverse the course, I think in this level is where we can actually start to take action, right? Once we like kind of cut the addiction or at least recognize that, then for me, the number one question I always ask is, okay, what do you do with your free time? The kind of what we started conversating about. I hate that word, but what we started speaking about at the beginning of this episode, what do you do with your free time? Because if you don't have an intentional thing to do with it, you will just go to your distractions, right? And you'll doom scroll, and you'll be just stuck in bed for hours with a screen 3 inches off your face. And so, I think that's where we begin to kind of start to cultivate our hobbies, is like taking an honest look at our free time and saying, okay, I get home at work at whatever time, I'll cook dinner. And then at that, I will, my bedtime is, 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock. I have X number of hours. What do I intend to do with that? I think this is where we can start to recover and reclaim kind of our autonomy and personal realities, is to then become intentional with our free time, so that the kind of de facto action isn't just distraction. If I'm going to watch YouTube videos, it's for a specific purpose. Am I learning something, or whatever it may be? Am I going to start to cultivate a hobby? Now that's a different question, and we can talk about that. But I think moving from distraction means being intentional with our free time, at least having options to say, when I have an afternoon free, when I have an evening free, what am I going to do? Am I going to call a friend, go to dinner with a buddy, or am I going to engage in one of my hobbies? At least having a kind of a short list, or like a tasting menu of what I'm going to do with my free time. I think that can be very helpful.
Okay, then turning to, obviously these are not comprehensive takes on any of these issues, but we're just kind of giving some indications as to how one might think about and engage with the things concerned. So turning then to entertainment, I think about this with some frequency. I heard this really cool lecture by, I think his name is Thomas Harmon, who teaches at the University of St. Thomas in Houston. And I also read a book called Entertaining Ourselves to Death, which is somewhat famous, and it's gone through several publications. And then the author has published other things of a similar sort. But at present, we're in the digital age. It strikes me that the digital age is about storage of data and retrieval of data. So this is a development, as it were, from the electric age, which is about projection of like basically images and content. We're still using the digital age after the manner of the electric age, although with AI now we're really starting to deploy the digital means that lie at our disposal. But this was the governing paradigm, the electric age, like with the kind of entertainment which issued from it, was the governing paradigm for a long time. And this one author that I read, he comments how it shapes all of our communications such that everything that we do is framed by or is otherwise couched in terms of entertainment. So it's like you think about, like a kid is on the computer for 1 billion hours. If he's just playing whatever Flash game on like ebombsworld.com circa 2003, you're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But if he's doing something like The Logical Journey of the Zumbinis or like Dr. Quandary's Island, like these educational little games that we had when we were little, then you're like, oh, it's okay, he's learning. But it's learning couched in terms of entertainment.
Yeah.
And the medium, says Marshall McLuhan, is the message.
Yeah.
And if we learn from what's communicated to us at practically every turn that we need entertaining, then we become little entertainment needy beasts, right? And when things come to us in hard terms, stark terms, otherwise bare terms, we're just not having anything of it.
No.
Right? But I think that a lot of people are realizing that they need to opt out of this or they need to choose something otherwise because it's starting to undermine their humanity.
Yeah.
So like this whole like raw dogging thing, it's like you get on a plane.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You have no headphones, you have no cell phone, you have no book, you have no computer, you have no distraction of any sort, no entertainment of any sort, and you just see it through. Because the point is like, do you have thoughts to think? Do you have an interior world on which to repose? Do you have the kind of fortitude or courage of personhood so as to like see a difficult thing through? So people recognize the need for this because all of this entertainment has just been dehumanizing us and like rendering us weak and wounded further. So thoughts about entertainment?
Yeah, I think that entertainment paradigm is something I think we definitely have lived through, but we've seen this transition and is very kind of, to be very honest, confusing as all hell to us. Like, because we've seen one age, we see a new one, and we don't know what to make of really either. Yeah. And I think that you start to, question why that, like, do I need a reset in my life? How do I think it proposes certain questions to us. How do I communicate with people? What do I value in what I take into my life? Like, what is the types of entertainment that I'm willing to let into my life? And if so, how and to what means of that? And if it becomes in such a way that I only engage with that which is kind of sweet to my taste or tickles my ears, I'm looking at not the value of what is in front of me, but I'm looking at the entertainment value of that. How does that make me feel? And that's, when you look at, I love going to concerts and live music because the entire thing is a cultivated experience to make you feel something, and I love live events for that because you can do a lot with that. But if the entire thing now is such an experience of how does this make me feel, if that becomes my judgment, right? And you say, how was that? Oh man, I really felt like X. How was a concert? Oh my gosh, I felt like they were really locked into that moment. If that becomes our kind of metric, is my felt experience because I'm only looking at the entertainment value of this, and I discredit anything which is subpar to an high entertainment value, then I think those are things that we actually need to kind of maybe reset on some things. And that's why, the experiences of just getting on a flight with no strings attached is kind of attractive. And it actually might be worth it sometimes to just put yourself through a difficult experience to kind of detox in that way.
So apropos of hobbies, I don't have many hobbies. I like walking. I like hiking. If there's snow on the ground, I like snowshoeing. I like putting myself in totally compromised situations of an adventurous sort, so I can have to, sort it out. But I really like languages. I like acquiring languages and speaking languages, and I especially love forming connections on the basis of a linguistic kind of friendship. So every day I do 15 minutes of French, Spanish, German, and Italian. And I've used various different language programs, but it's interesting, the ones that are for your entertainment are the ones that I find least helpful. So I'm not throwing shade here. If you like Duolingo, God bless, but I hate Duolingo. I hate it, and I retain nothing of it.
Yeah.
But whereas there's this other one that's just kind of boring, but it appeals to my agency. So whereas Duolingo, I feel like it's appealing to me qua passivity.
Yeah.
There's another one called the Pimsleur method where somebody says something in English, there's a lot of traffic on the highway, and then you're responsible for formulating that same sentence in the language that you're acquiring, hay mucho tráfico en la autopista. And then it repeats it in the language that you're acquiring twice so that you can correct for formulation and pronunciation. And so you can train your ear and train your mouth to actually exercise agency. So I think that that kind of leads us in then to this notion of art or the leisure, which is requisite in a culture for the production of art.
Yes.
Which leisure I think is safeguarded by a worshipful disposition.
Yep.
Because when we think culture, at the root of it is cultus. So there has to be a higher thing that you acknowledge in some way, shape, or form. In Christian culture, obviously, the Most High God, who then imparts an order to our life and sorts for us, as it were, the things most worthy of pursuit, the things least worthy of pursuit, and the things that fall between or among. So talk to us a little bit about art.
Yeah, when I talk to students about cultivating hobbies and things like this, and I always put them side by side, it's you have to cultivate a hobby and you have to cultivate a prayer life, and they actually go in tandem with each other, right? And the reason why is that when we start to engage in the art itself, Maybe you start writing sonnets. Maybe you actually engage in athletic sports or start to sketch or paint or something like that, right? When you look at leisure, according to our very kind of post-entertainment world, or a very, in a different age, right? A very kind of productive world, art and leisure has no purpose to it. It's a waste of time. Like, what are you producing? You're just doing that for your enjoyment? Like, it's a waste of time. Well, in many respects, isn't that what prayer is? Prayer is wasting time with God. And so if we learn how to waste time well in this world, it actually fuels how we can sit with God in prayer and learn how to waste time with him. And if we know how to waste time in prayer with God, we tend to be comfortable in engaging in leisure. And so they definitely go hand in hand, but I think then moving us back once again closer and closer to the product of a culture, the art, right, helps us to also engage with God himself. And the way we engage with God is worship. And so it was one of the things that in the article that was not included. Like I said, they went through music and communications, and the thing that wasn't kind of painted out was religion, and how religion actually has followed this pattern as well.
Yeah.
And so I think returning back to the proper art, returning back to worship and true worship in its beauty and in its grandeur, but also in its simplicity in many respects, help us to keep all of this back in its proper place, and helps to then reorient the human heart, which at the end of the day is what Christ came to do, to take on our humanity, to reorient us and to restore the likeness of which we've lost with sin. And so now that we can stand in his image and likeness. So not being afraid to actually look at worship as true art, and not on an entertainment basis, and not am I distracted, or what's the over under on what Father's vestments are going to be today at Mass, but is this going to be a true engagement with art that is coming from a culture that is a Catholic culture, and to be totally unafraid of actually diving into the depths of that with gusto.
Yeah, I think like at the end of the day, you got individuals and you've got communities. The individuals are for the communities, and the communities are for those transcendent goods which define them, which organize them, which orient them towards a horizon beyond their kind of limited material needs, but towards an immaterial realization of the fullness of their humanity. And in the Christian setting, we believe that God reveals himself and that he mediates his interior life so that we can partake of it. And that gives us a sense for the whole hierarchy of goods. You got like keep on existing, procreating and educating family, like knowing the truth about God and living peaceably in society. Like there are a variety of goods, and they're meant to be enshrined in our lives, like individually and communally, in such a way that those who kind of happen upon us from without say, there's something going on here, and it seems like it should be enunciated in this manner. And so it's like from the fullness of our individual and communal lives, art comes forth, because like when you have not just like attended to the most basic needs, but when you have organized in such a way as to enshrine within your lives what's most important, you're going to want to testify to that. You're going to want to sing of what you love. And you might do that with the visual arts. You might do that with, like worship. But I mean, worship ultimately crowns all of our efforts insofar as God's our creator and our end. And so I think that like there always has to be a space in a true society, in a healthy society, for worship. And often the quality of our worship shows the quality of our humanity. Because it's like, you have various people who say things like, I mean, the hardest thing for us at the end of the day is just to be alone with our thoughts. And if we can't be alone with our thoughts, that's a kind of condemnation of our humanity. But if you associate individually and communally in such a way that you have kind of certainty and confidence as to the validity and the excellence of your pursuits, then you're going to want to testify to that. And you're going to be at home in your own self. So I think that like, in our contemplative lives of prayer and study, we're not looking for something that gets a dopamine hit or draws our attention away from the fact that we're sad and angry, or, kind of titillates and excites on the basis of what's most perceptibly entertaining. But we want the noble. We want the fine. We want the excellent. We want the honest. We want the virtuous. We want the good, because it's only in contact with the good that we as incomplete beings are made complete. And I think that it's in giving testimony to that completion, right, that we welcome others into the prayer, the study. We welcome others into the worship and leisure. Final thoughts.
Amen.
Okay. Dig. Well, Thanks for proposing this topic. I enjoy it. Folks, that's all we've got for you with this here episode of Godsplaining. One kind of cool announcement. You've heard it now once or twice, but we've got our all-comers retreat in Providence, Rhode Island, and it's going to be June 20th through 22nd. So all-comers retreat means all God's children 21 and older. And it's going to be at Providence College, a ministry of the Dominican Friars of the Province of St. Joseph, to which we pertain. And so you can find information about that as to how to sign up on our website. And again, we're super grateful for all those who contributed to our retreat fundraiser back in the fall, which is able to make it yet more affordable for all those who would like to join. So you may be surprised, shocked even, at how affordable it is. Apart from that, you know the deets at the end of the episode, but yeah, know of our prayers for you. Please pray for us, and we'll look forward to chatting with you next time on Godsplaining. Father Bonaventure, if you had the choice between holding a toad and subscribing to a YouTube channel, what would you choose?
Subscribe to a toad holding a YouTube channel.
Oh my gosh. Please subscribe to a toad holding a YouTube channel, especially if it's ours. Cheers.